Welcome everybody. My name is Pim van Baarsen. I'm CEO for the Sales and Technology Cluster. We have a special event for you today of our ACES, Autonomous Connected Electrified Shared Special Interest Group today. Should be a fascinating event, really looking forward to it. I'm very pleased that we're joined by, well, several of our ACES champions, but Roger Atkins in particular, who will guide us through the day. Just before I hand over to Roger, I just wanted to point out that obviously this is part of a series of events that we do. So I would encourage everybody to visit our website, servitising.technologycluster.com, to look ahead at future events. We've got an upcoming webinar on how to make the most of your property, especially post-COVID, and what you want to do in terms of occupying offices and workshops or not. Which should be quite interesting. And obviously we have our annual conference coming up towards the end of this month as well, which is shaping up to be an amazing event. So I would encourage you all to have a look there. Please, by all means, check out our YouTube channel as well, where we record all of these events and our webinars, and so you can catch up on anything that you might have missed. So please do that. And so without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Roger to guide us through the day. Roger, over to you.
Thank you very much, Pim, and yeah, welcome on this, well, extraordinary time. It's we were talking earlier before we all sort of opened everything up, how wonderful the news was yesterday that there is light at the end of the tunnel. That light at the end of the tunnel, of course, can occasionally be an oncoming train. But I think on this occasion, that definitely isn't what it looks like. So the prospect of a vaccine, the prospect of being able to meet up more and not just do these Zoom calls has got to be a good thing. Although personally, I think we have learned a lot of good things from this, and not always traveling far afield and meeting up in this way. Perhaps we're going to see a kind of hybrid version of that, which would be good. But welcome to you on this Zoom call today. We're still doing that, I guess, for the foreseeable future, certainly, I guess, the rest of this year. So we were going to have a quartet today. We've got a trio. So our trio is going to start with David Wong from the SMMT. Mike Potts will then follow, and then Ashit Shah. And unfortunately, Dave Rawlins has had a domestic challenge with one of his children, which is something that I think anyone on this call would understand. That takes priority. So sadly, he won't be joining us for that. But we have a trio. We've got a couple of hours. We're going to finish around 3 o'clock. We're looking to have a good discussion and debate. David has got a ton of stuff to get back to, so he's actually needing to go at 2 o'clock today. But what that does mean is we'll do a nice full Q&A with David after the first presentation, a bit after each of the following presentations, and then a sort of group one, a collective one at the end. So pitch in, ask what you like, no holds barred. This is amongst us all to try and understand where are we with the autonomous connected electric and shared proposition, that quartet of change. Philip has the best name for it, I think. I recall being at a meeting some while ago, and he called it the 4 horsemen of the autocalypse. Still my favorite name. Great name, Philip. So on that note, we're going to start with David Wong from the SMMT. He's Senior Technology and Innovation Manager at the SMMT, and he's done that, I think, for kind of 6 years or so. So really under the skin of both that organization and what's going on around the technology that the manufacturers are putting together, what's credible and what's not, what's the hope over hype, all of that stuff. David, the stage is yours. We are still not meeting in person, so Zoom away, please, my friend, and give us your steer on it all, please. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Roger. Just going to share my screen here and put it into presentation mode. Right. Excellent. Good. Thanks for having me. For those of you who do not know about SMMT, I believe most of you do know, but for the benefit of those who don't, we are the UK's automotive industry body, representing what I would say is the sum total of UK automotive. It's more than 850 companies, including all major vehicle manufacturers. I say vehicle and not just cars, because we do represent the truck and the bus and commercial vehicle manufacturers as well as a number of automotive component suppliers, large and small, from the big boys, household names, all the way down the supply chain tiers to the makers of nuts and bolts and the pressers of metal. We also represent the independent aftermarket, and be known to quite a lot of people, in fact, as well as some technology and engineering firms. And in the last 24 months or so, an increasing number of mobility startups, digital startups, auto tech startups, mainly from outside automotive. So sum total of UK automotive, as I said it. So I run the technology and innovation team at SMMT. And my remit is basically electric vehicles, connected and automated vehicles, hydrogen fuel cells, anything that's got to do with digital innovation and the future of mobility. So I'm going to give you a very high-level overview, if you like, on ACES today from the perspective of automotive industry. Of course, I can only speak on behalf of automotive. Perhaps setting out a few thoughts on where we are currently, where we might be in the near future, as well as what all these actually mean for automotive. So let's start off by showing you this overview slide. This is basically a slide on the facts and figures from last year. The reason why I wanted to emphasize last year is because when you see us reproduce or update this slide sometime next year, these figures will be very different. In fact, a lot of these figures will go down. Turnover, value added, cars built, cars registered, they will all go down when I show you again next year. And the reason actually is very obvious. As you know, the industry, the market and the industry both have actually taken a big hit due to COVID. But let's dive in now on ACES. So we think the future is about ACES. It's about automated, connected, electrification. And the last one, most people think it's about shared mobility. We think it's about, the S is about services and shared mobility. So it's not just all about shared mobility, but very much about services. So that's our view. And our view is that the future will be one of convergence. So let's unpack each one very briefly. Let's start with A, automation. Yeah. So where are we today in this journey towards automation? Well, I would say that in terms of what's legal on the road at the moment, we're just at SAE level 2. SAE level 2 means it's ADAS, Advanced Driver Assistance Systems. So the driver is fully responsible at all times. Yep, there's longitudinal and lateral assistance, but the driver must pay attention at all times, and you'll be responsible for your dynamic driving task at all times. Yeah, so that's where we are. When are we going to get to level 3, level 4? I'm going to get into this in a minute. But in terms of level 5, now, I mean, just want to reserve this because it's a huge area of debate. I'm not going to go into this very deeply or reserve this for Q&A if you're interested to know a little bit more. Suffice to say, at this point in time, level 5 is actually a red herring in the discussion. So if we are at level 2, so let's look at some facts and figures here. This is based on our full year 2018 new car registration data. As you can see, actually, a lot of new cars sold in the UK today actually have ADAS available. Now, whether they are available as standard fitment or optional fitment is another matter. But for example, if you take autonomous emergency braking, AEB, which is really useful, it's been proven empirically to reduce real-world rear-end crashes by about 38%. So about 3/4 of new cars sold in the UK actually have AEB available. And in terms of ACC, which you are more familiar with, adaptive cruise control, that's about half of all new cars sold in the UK. So we are on the precipice now of introducing AVs on UK roads. And this is level 3. And you may have followed in the press that the government was consulting. I say was consulting because the consultation has closed. So government was consulting on making the automated lane keeping system, ALKS, available on UK roads as an automated driving system. Now, just to set the record straight, ALKS has actually been approved as Regulation 157 at the UNECE on the 24th of June this year as an automated driving system. and the UK is a contracting party to the UNECE. So UK is among one among many countries at the UNECE that actually ratified and adopted Regulation 157, accepting and acknowledging ALKS as an automated driving system. The consultation is basically asking whether ALKS should be accepted as an automated driving system in the UK, or whether ALKS should actually be no more than just another ADAS. Now, first and foremost, in terms of regulation, we already have the Automated Electric Vehicles Act. In terms of the automated part of this act, of AVA, as we call AVA 2018, the first part of this act basically deals with the insurance framework for automated vehicles. So the liability bit has been sorted. In other words, if and when we bring these vehicles to the market, and if they're accepted as automated vehicles on UK roads, we have an insurance framework from day one, which not many countries in the world can lay claim to. So now is basically for the government to decide whether ALKS should be considered as automated vehicles. If they do consider it as automated vehicles, then the highway code must be changed, must be amended accordingly. But we are on the precipice, I would say. Then the question is, where do we go from here? I mean, if ALKS is the first iteration, first version of an automated driving system, I would say I've got no time to go into the details of ALKS, but it's a very, very limited system, only for use on motorways at less than 60 kilometers an hour when there's genuine congestion or traffic jam. The driver actually cannot turn on ALKS at his own whim. It's the system, upon assessment of the environment and detection of the right conditions, will offer the driver the option of turning on ALKS. Now, of course, if you love driving in traffic jams on M25, you can just decline the offer and carry on driving manually. That's absolutely fine. But if ALKS is the first ever version, a limited version of an automated driving system, the question is, where do we go from here? From our perspective, we think the next frontiers are potentially ALKS Plus, which is basically the same system, but with additional capabilities, for example, lane change and operations at 130 kilometers an hour, which is what they are currently discussing now at UNECE as the next step. And that means up to 70 miles an hour on UK roads. And then one level beyond that could possibly be SAE level 4 passenger cars. Those deal with steering wheels, paddles, and brakes. Yeah. So if you see the picture there, that's one of those very old pictures from Volvo that shows that you can actually do something while the car is driving itself. But at the end of its use case, the end of its operational design domain, it will basically transition back to you to take control of the vehicle. Probably, maybe junction to junction on the motorway. At the end of the junction, you'll be asked to take back control as you carry on the journey to maybe your village. But there are also other types of SAE level 4 vehicles. Just because some of them do not have steering wheels and brakes, do not make them SAE level 5 vehicles. People do think SAE level 5 are those without steering wheels and brakes. No, that's not the case. Yeah. So there are two types of what we think could be SAE level 4 highly automated road passenger services, to borrow the Law Commission's parlance. One is basically those shuttles that can ferry passengers, particularly in tightly confined, tightly geofenced areas, maybe within cities, maybe within other urban areas, or a particular village or village to village, for example. And then, of course, the trials going on in Scotland over the Forth Bridge, automated buses. Of course, at the moment, there are still safety drivers behind the wheels. But we think the more prominent and perhaps the area where there are great opportunities is actually automated logistics, both off and on road. Yeah. So Aurigo has actually had these trials with British Airways at Heathrow for automated off-road logistics. And you may have heard that Einride has launched their first vehicle for interurban automated logistics. But that's also automated delivery. And so the picture there is Neuro, but you've got other examples as well. And we know for a fact that in the UK, Zenzik is looking at this earnestly. because this represents an area of opportunity, as well as potentially in the context of COVID, this could actually enhance the delivery services and making them more hygienic, if you want. So these are some potential areas going forward. So let's quickly now dive into the second one, which is C, stands for connectivity. Now we think by 2026, all new cars, new passenger cars sold in the UK will be connected. At the moment, there are about two-thirds of them. Two-thirds of them are more or less connected. Yeah, but we think 100% will be connected by 2026. And in fact, in terms of connected vehicle services today, a lot of these are already available. Yeah. Those that are not in blue will be available perhaps sometime in the future. But it doesn't take a genius to actually observe that those that are already available today are mainly vehicle to cloud or vehicle to network services, meaning they are still based on UU connectivity. And UU means long range connectivity, no different to our mobile phones today. The problem with this is basically connectivity on our road network. Yes, we have the universal service obligation that came into force about 2 years ago, where about 98% of premises in the UK must have connectivity, but we are talking about the roads. Yeah. So this is the data that our RAC Foundation crunched, courtesy of Ofcom. Yeah. So this is not data that was plucked out of thin air. Now, this is at the end of 2018, so it's about just under 2 years ago. And it shows that actually on the 246,000 miles of GB road network, only about half of the entire network actually have 4G, full 4G connectivity, and 71% 3G. But what's alarming is that 2% of the 246,000 miles of GB road network actually do not even have 2G connectivity. If you don't have a 2G signal, e-call wouldn't work. What's the point of having emergency call when you can't have a signal at all? Yep. So what's the next frontier then? If that's the situation today, we think that going forward, one of the areas of opportunity in terms of further development is basically short range connectivity. And this is V2V and V2I, vehicle to vehicle and vehicle to infrastructure. These are some of the use cases. So they have been proven. So you may be asking the question, but why aren't they deployed therefore if they have been proven? The question is, there is a lack of a business model. If you look carefully, all these are actually safety related. And this is a slightly perverse thing about these sort of technologies. And we know that safety related technologies are very important, but it's very difficult to sell. Reason why is that most consumers expect safety related technologies to be standard. So to find a business model to actually recoup your costs and to make money selling V2V and V2I technology is arduous. And until we find the right business model for it, it's very difficult to bring these to market. So you may be asking, where's 5G in all these? Now, as an industry, we support 5G and we think that 5G is a force for good and we welcome 5G. But a lot of those services I showed you just now can already be adequately deployed on LTE, on 4G. We think 5G has its own use cases, particularly in terms of automated driving, like real-time, over-the-air updates, layering of high definition, high precision mapping, as well as video feeds, and particularly in terms of providing that consumer services, providing video feeds or Wi-Fi hotspot while you're in public transport. So there are use cases for 5G, and the one that we think we are most excited about is MEC, multi-access edge computing, whereby the distributed systems allow for the edge to take some of the processing burden and then provide for more reliable and low latency services. So there are some use cases, but a lot of the services can already be adequately deployed on LTE if we have decent coverage on the roads. Electrification now. Probably Roger's favorite topic. Now, the good news is that EV registrations are on the rise. This is on the back of contraction in the entire market due to very obvious reasons, yeah, since middle of March. But this is the good news. Year-to-date figures show that basically 9.1% of the market is made up of BEVs and PHEVs, plug-in cars. Yeah. Compare it to the same time, first 10 months of last year, you could see that's north and south. right? That's daylight in between those two figures there. This is the good news, although of course, in terms of the park, of the fleet as a whole, plug-in vehicles make up less than 1% of the entire 35 million cars in the UK. But as you could see from these figures, basically it's on the rise. And we think the uptrend is going to be here to stay. If you look at this, basically, we think that this uptrend will continue. It is here to stay. And plug-in car market outlook that we just recently published shows that if we don't breach 10% market share this year for plug-in cars, we will definitely breach it sometime early next year. And around about 2022, we think it will hit about 16% of the market minimum, which is terrific news. This is what we've been looking forward to. However, there is room for improvement. And we think uptake needs to rise faster than other markets in Europe. Now, we are doing very well. Let's put it that way and make no mistake about that. We are doing very well. But then other countries, and especially in the last 6 months, have been doing better than us. For example, France and Germany. Because the post-COVID stimulus that their governments decided to make available to the industry included some bumper packages for people actually to buy battery electric vehicles. Whereas in the UK, we have actually not pursued that same stimulus strategy. So Germany and France have overtaken us slightly, but we need to up our game. And the reason is because post-Brexit is all the more important for us to ensure we get the lion's share of plug-in car allocation in the UK. This is a competitive business. We are competing against other markets for allocation of vehicles. The vehicles will be produced, but we need them to be allocated to the UK. Talking about vehicles being produced and allocation to the market, at the moment, we have already got more than 80 plug-in models available in the UK, and with more to come. And there was one study published last year by an organization which is quite reputable and based in Brussels, suggests that there should be more than 325 plug-in models all across Europe by 2025. So the vehicles will be produced. We just want them to come in large quantities to the UK. So what's the next challenge? We think the next challenge is to go beyond the early adopters, to go beyond the innovators and early adopters, to take a language from Rogers' curve, to go beyond these two stages and to penetrate the mass market. That is basically, we want to look at the early majority and the late majority. Yeah. So mass market is important, and we think driving mass market uptakes actually requires overcoming the 3 A's, and it's product affordability, range anxiety, and infrastructure adequacy, because every single major reputable survey tells you the same thing. They can't be wrong if they're all telling the same thing in every part of the world, in every major market in the world, even a study that the DFD themselves commissioned last year. Now, of course, we must overcome these from the perspective of people we're trying so hard to persuade, not just from the perspective of the converted, because it's the pain of those people who are petrol hates, those people who haven't been converted, that we must try to solve. It's their pain that we must address. If they think, even if they just perceive that it's challenging for them to convert to becoming EV users because infrastructure is not up to scratch, then we must seek to address that perception and not sweep it under the carpet, because their perspective matters. And as you know, from the marketing fraternity will know that the user's perspective matters, because to them, perception is reality. So finally, the S, services and shared mobility, as I say, not just shared, but also very much in services. We think there'll be value shifts in the automotive industry. If it's not already happening, it will happen perhaps more pronounced going forward. So I like to quote every time I do these sort of presentations from the PwC's report, which I think is very useful in giving a general idea of where we are heading. If you look at their analysis here, it shows that in about 10 years' time, an increasing chunk of the revenue share and the profit share will actually come from mobility as a service, connected vehicle services, and auto tech components, rather than the more traditional vehicle sales and supply chain. So if you believe this, then you'll be thinking that we need to change, because going forward, making and selling cars alone will no longer be sufficient. And perhaps that's why quite a number of traditional car companies, dating back to 2015, so 2 CEOs ago in Ford, they've been saying that, oh, we're going to reinvent ourselves. We're going to move from being just making and selling cars to providing mobility. And of course, if you're GM, you go one step further. You say, oh, no, not just mobility. We're going to be a tech company. And that perhaps explains why almost every major vehicle manufacturer worth its salt has launched a mobility arm or a tech arm or a venture arm, to look at the opportunities to reinvent themselves to become more than just a car company. Right? However, the challenge is this is the brutal reality. It's all very sexy to talk about mass, to talk about mobility, because, well, that's the way forward. No people want to buy and use cars anymore, particularly those living in urban centers and in cities. They want to use shared services. People don't bother taking driving lessons anymore, or even take, having a driving license going forward. All very true. The problem is, if you want to make money in this area, it has to be mass market. Until mass becomes mass market, it's very difficult for this to fly. So these alternative ownership mobility models are actually very, very interesting. But a lot of the companies, I'll come back to this later, a lot of companies find it very difficult to survive in this cutthroat segment. So what are the implications? So I'll share with you about 4 quick implications here. The first one is, I think no prizes for guessing. The internal combustion engine, insofar as a standalone internal combustion engine, is the automotive industry's burning platform, to borrow from Nokia's analogy of burning platform. Yeah, and that is why electrification ramp up is gathering pace. It's going to probably gather even a greater pace going forward. And in terms of the UK industry itself, I think we can hold our own in terms of producing plug-in cars, including battery electric vehicles. Yeah, these are some of those that have either been produced or they're in the pipeline. Yeah, we can hold our own. However, again, from the industry's point of view, to give us a fighting chance of having future production in the UK, we need a few things. So we need an orderly transformation of the industry. I showed you in my very first slide, we produce about 2.5 million engines per annum. That will have to change. And to change, we need an orderly transition from producing engine to producing power electronics, motors and drives, and batteries. This is just a snapshot of the industry's energy storage battery needs going forward. But just like Faraday Institution, we think we need gigafactories in the UK, but gigafactories alone is not enough. We need the battery material supply chain around these gigafactories, right? Because otherwise, the gigafactories will be doing no more than just assembling the packs. And that's not what we want. We want more than that in order to create value and jobs in the UK. Generally speaking, we think we need about 120 gigawatts hour per annum by 2040. Yeah. Whether that's 5, 6, 7, 8 gigafactories, that's another matter, right? That's perhaps not the more interesting question. The more interesting question is the capacity that we need. And we think we could actually produce round about 1.8 to 2 million EVs by 2040 if we have about 120 to 140 gigawatt hours per annum capacity by 2040. So the implication here is that we need to change, and the government needs to support the industry in this transition, because structural transition is very difficult. It doesn't happen overnight and requires a well laid out and thought through plan. The second implication is the need to rethink value proposition and market positioning. So what do I mean by this? Value proposition is not the same as USP. And people think, well, VP is the same as unique selling proposition. No, it's not the same. And to illustrate, I go back to the business model canvas, the Usterwalder's business model canvas. The heart of this canvas is value proposition. Value proposition is to understand what customer job you're helping the customer to get done. So if you're buying a drill, you're not actually buying a drill, you're buying a hole in the wall. That's your job. That's your customer job. right? So it's the same with Coca-Cola, for example. So when James Quincy took over the helm of Coca-Cola and became the CEO, he basically went about repositioning the company and asking the company, what are we going to be? And to cut the long story short, they decided they're not just going to be a soft drink company, they're going to be a total beverage company. If you think of yourself as a total beverage company, you've just broadened your world overnight, which is why today they own quite a number of brands that have nothing to do with soft drinks. For example, maybe a lot of people didn't know it, but they own Costa Coffee in the UK. Yeah. So value proposition is asking what customer job you're helping them to get done. So why is this a serious implication for automotive? Because we have to ask ourselves, are we really in the business of making cars? Are we a car company? Or going back to one of my previous slides, actually, are we a mobility company or a tech company? Are we actually helping the customer to get from A to B? Is that the job that we're helping them to get done? Or are we basically just selling them a car? There's no right or wrong answer here. It depends what each vehicle manufacturer, each car manufacturer thinks the world in the future may look like, right? The only trouble is to make it worth and to make it pay is really difficult, which is why you have seen in the news, some companies, for example, car clubs have actually moved out of the UK, exited the UK altogether because it's really difficult to make it work. I'll give you another example. I can say this because in the public domain, Lime. Yeah? So you know Lime scooters, e-scooters? When I was in Atlanta a couple of years ago, Lime scooters were everywhere. They were the most popular thing in town, helping people get around in downtown Atlanta, right? And then last year they announced they're going to pull out from Atlanta. We thought, wow, despite being one of the most popular thing in Atlanta, they decided to pull out. It's very difficult to make money. Yeah. So the question for automotive companies is that if we're going to enter into these areas, are mobility solutions stretched too far? Or are they the value proposition worth pursuing? Is this the next big thing that is worth us persevering even beyond this very difficult phase? That brings us to the third implication. We think that great products alone will not cut it. We've got to servitize them, wrap services around them. And this is why the ACEs, the S in the ACEs actually really matter. It's not just about shared mobility, it's about services. So let me illustrate. So if you're a car maker, now this is completely hypothetical. This is basically just some crazy ideas that I've thought about. It doesn't mean that any of these might be implemented. But let's think about the potential of servitizing the car. So let's say if I'm an EV maker, right? I might sell the EV to my customer, but I might also want to offer them additional services. So perhaps the system, the connected car system in the EV is intelligent enough to be able to schedule the customer's journey based on the diary. Being able to read the diary means it's able to actually program the sat nav. From the moment the customer actually drives the car towards the destination, the car could actually offer booking of parking spaces because it knows where the customer is going. The customer could decline, of course, but let's say it decides to actually book a parking spot. Because it's an EV, could go one step further, would you like me to book you a parking spot with a charger? So pre-book charger, wonderful. If there's one available, of course. And when he gets back into the car after his meeting, is on the way home, perhaps, on the way to the next destination, there's a little bit of time in the journey, and the system is intelligent enough, again, to read the diary and basically offer concierge services. Well, your wedding anniversary is next week. Would you like me to book a table in a nice restaurant for you and your spouse? Or in 2 weeks' time, servicing is due. Would you like me to book an appointment, a slot in the garage? And then perhaps as you're driving along, there is basically connectivity between the car and your smart fridge. And you could recognize that today, unexpectedly, milk is running low because maybe your child has drunk too much milk. So it offers you the possibility of rerouting your journey home for you to pick up a bottle of milk along the way, maybe drive through Waitrose. And if you accept that, it will do exactly that. And you go to a drive-through pickup point in Waitrose, pick up the bottle of milk, and you drive off. Wait a minute, I haven't paid for it. Now, of course, when you authorize the transaction, it has synced with your Barclays account, and basically money has been transferred. So you don't need even to swipe your card or tap your contactless card even. And when you arrive home about 2 miles from home, it will tell you, the car will tell your thermostat to begin heating up the house to your preferred temperature. At about 500 yards from home, it will tell the smart gates to begin to open. And when you're safely at home, the car is parked, the app on your phone will pop up telling you how much your insurance you have incurred in terms of insurance premium today. And that's because it gathers information about your driving behavior, where you've driven, and how much you've driven. So pay how you drive, pay as you drive, and pay where you drive. And of course, then you plug your car in, you charge it, and perhaps I could also partner with energy companies and provide you with perhaps flexibility services and energy storage that can give you a one-stop solution for your needs. So wrapping services around the car is possible. Do I need to do all this? No, I partner with people. But as I say, these are all hypothetical. These are part of the value chain. We don't need to do all this, but if we could start thinking more holistically about how we can servitize the car, there's so much more we can offer customers. And of course, servitization lends itself to new models of ownership, or perhaps we should call it usership these days. In fact, buying behavior is changing. Now, most people do buy their cars on PCP these days, but going forward, who knows? There may be people who think that perhaps PCP no longer cuts it for them. Subscription models may be the in thing going forward. Not quite taken off yet, but who knows what might happen in the future. So quite a number of manufacturers are already jumping on the bandwagon, offering subscription services, some of which are very flexible, very short term, and you could flip cars perhaps during the weekdays, you have one particular model, and weekends to suit your lifestyle needs, another model, all within the same package. These may be possible going forward. Whether it will take off big time, who knows? So the final implication is to do all the first three implications, to do all those that I mentioned, it's impossible for any company to go it alone. Gone are the days where you could rely on your R&D skunkworks or in-house R&D operations and hope that they have all the answers to all the questions in the world. Because not all the best minds necessarily work for you. Partnerships and open innovation are the way forward. And this means rethinking the way you develop new products or services. Right? In the past, we talked about ready, steady, fire. It's very linear, very well mapped out processes and the stages in NPD or NPS. NSD. The problem is because of the higher rate of obsolescence and shorter product life cycles, it's not possible to do all these using that very linear thinking, linear process. It has to be iterative, which is why you've got in the software world lots of DevOps, you've got iterative processes, right? And to an extent, as you probably know, one particular EV manufacturer does it in a maybe slightly controversial way, but a clever way. That is putting out their driver assistance software. They call it automation, but it's actually still driver assistance system, but putting it out there on beta version and using you and me, drivers, customers, as guinea pigs, because that shortens the cycle. Now, let's put the ethical debate about those things aside, but all I'm trying to say is that it is something that everyone is thinking about because we need to find ways to cut the NPD and NSD development cycles and make things get to market quicker. Now, of course, in the automotive industry, I think we need to do it ethically. Enough said about that. Let me just say something very quickly about Coopetition. Traditionally, we've got very different time scales, right, and different cycles. Yeah. So if you look at the clock speeds in automotive, traditionally it's been 3 to 7 years from conception of an idea all the way through to putting the product in the market. Yeah. In digital, we're talking about apps in a matter of weeks. If you're talking about digital systems in a matter of months. Yeah. So we need to find somewhere the sweet spot in the middle where we can meet, which is why you find that a lot of automotive companies are starting to partner with each other, because in the area of ACES, particularly automation, they cannot do it alone. It's very expensive. It's too expensive to go alone. So these are some of the more prominent partnerships that you've seen in the public domain, but the truth is not this. The truth or the reality out there is more like this. Everybody is in bed with everybody, because you just need those synergies that come from partnerships. And I promise you, this is my last slide in this long-winded presentation. So industry itself is taking a lead. So what we're doing is that we're doing our little bit in helping our members to actually latch on to this open innovation bandwagon. So we've run 2 editions of our Future Mobility Challenge, which is to allow basically our members who have an intention to become more than just car makers, and to perhaps some of them wish to refashion themselves as mobility players, to discover interesting solutions from startups, scale-ups, and SMEs from all over the world. And these are auto tech solutions, talking about mobility solutions, digital solutions, beyond what they could normally find within the automotive supply chain. Now, automotive companies know the supply chain very well, but they may not have great visibility outside the automotive supply chain, so outside the automotive ecosystem. We're talking about, for example, fintech, insurtech solutions from maybe the Far East, or cybersecurity solutions from Israel. So what we're trying to do is to bring these solutions to the fore and make them more visible to the automotive companies, with a view to developing partnerships and potentially investment. The interesting thing is that, as you can see from the figures there, we had 39%, nearly 40% follow-up rate. We call it the hit rate, with a view to potential partnership investment from these pitches that we organized. And they are private pitches involving the help of a number of cross-sector partners all over the world. So we think open innovation is the way forward. I think that's a whistle-stop tour of ACES from our perspective. I do apologize, it's been a bit of a long-winded one, but I'm very happy to take questions.
David, thank you very much. Look, there's a huge amount to talk about and go through. So not long-winded at all, my friend. That was comprehensive. And do you know what? I've got a ton of questions, but I'm not going to ask one of them, because I think it's always best to go to the audience first. So there is a question from Robert Palmer, and he's saying, if the government is planning to ban PHEVs, does it not distort the perceived uptake of battery electric vehicles to count registrations of PHEVs alongside BEVs? It's also about clarity to the consumer. I think Robert raises a very good point. You alluded to some of the timeline and where we are as a country and where Europe is and the rest of the world, etc., in this journey. And with all these timelines now on cessation of combustion engine manufacture and sale, I think Robert raises a good point. We need clarity and understanding. You know, Absolutely. What is it we want to do? When are we going to do it by, and how is it going to happen? So what do you say to Robert, Dave?
So firstly, it's worth understanding the thinking in the UK is quite different from the thinking in Europe. So in Europe, as you probably know, the European Commission sets targets, and these are emission targets, right? So CO2 targets. They can be very strict, and chances are that they'll be even stricter, all right, in the coming years. But nonetheless, these are CO2 targets. And they leave it then to the industry to decide how you wish to innovate to actually meet those targets. If, that's a big if you can meet those targets with internal combustion engines alone, good luck, go ahead. If, there's a big if, right? But nonetheless, the targets. In the UK, the thinking is more or less about outlawing certain technologies. In other words, picking winners. So of course, the government proposals at the moment is basically to end the sale of non-zero emission vehicles by 2035 or earlier if possible. So for starters, these are basically 2 schools of thoughts, and it's different. The UK is on a different trajectory to Europe. The second thing to say is that, certainly from our perspective, and maybe you'd expect us to say this, right? We certainly think that PHEVs are actually a very, very important transitional technology to a lot of people who at the moment, and I'm talking about mass market, right? I'm not talking about people who can afford a Porsche Taycan or people who can afford a Model S. I'm talking about the mass market. For a lot of people to whom BEV is attractive, but doesn't work for them quite yet, PHEV is a transitional technology. People who need to make those long journeys very frequently, people for whom perhaps access to charging infrastructure is a bit of a challenge, PHEV is important. And we think that PHEVs today will be cleaner in the future, because the PHEVs today will be able to innovate. And we are looking at the potential of, for example, automatic geofencing technologies in certain urban areas based on GPS. And we're also thinking along the lines of increasing the range of PHEV. So today, roughly, some may claim more, but roughly about 30 miles, or maybe slightly less. It's not inconceivable.
I'd say it ranges from
50.
Yeah, it ranges from 15 to 40. I think one of the PHEV issues, though, is what people actually do in terms of their charging regime.
Correct.
Again, it's a bit like any benchmark test. Anything that says a vehicle does X, it's X dependent on whatever. The WLTP is a benchmark test in terms of range of miles in EVs. Anyone who buys an EV knows that that is a benchmark. The real world number is then going to be different and almost certainly lower. Well, it's always lower. But I think Robert's also added on to his comment, define zero emission vehicle. Of course, what we are talking about here, if I might be so bold as to suggest, is zero tailpipe emissions on BEVs. PHEVs, it depends not on what the manufacturer number is, which triggers the taxation and all the other things, but it hugely depends on the charging protocol of the person in that car and the duty cycle. Someone who buys a PHEV and drives 20 miles a day, great, because they're driving an EV, they might as well be. As long as then they charge it up regularly, so they are actually running on the battery rather than the fossil fuel tank. So I think there's some stuff in there. Another question, I want to get the ones in from the audience, David. This is from Shoei Hay. Given the suggested importance and batteries and the associated supply chain, how will the UK achieve the necessary capacity in that area? So we're seeing, for example, British Volt building a battery factory here. We've had a battery factory, of course, for 10 years up in the Northeast with Nissan. But given the importance in the supply chain of batteries as a raw material into any EV, BEV or plug-in hybrid, how are we doing with that? Are we going to have enough capacity to build batteries, hopefully mainly in the UK, but certainly within the continent of Europe?
Well, that's the last bit of your comment there or question there, Roger, is probably easier to answer. Within Europe, I think they're looking after themselves. It's more clear-cut picture. I think what we're concerned about is basically the UK. You're absolutely right in saying that British Volt offers, I think, if I'm not mistaken, a maximum of 35 gigawatt hours per annum in terms of capacity. Yeah, the one up there in Sunderland is 2 gigawatts hours per annum. But by the way, people like your good friend Colin Heron is very cross whenever people say that British Volt is the first gigafactory. No, the Isaac one up there in Sunderland is the first one.
That's why I always reference it, because Colin told me off once. Yes, you're right.
That's true. Now, but the thing is that our concern is basically twofold. So one is that to actually locate EV manufacturing in the UK, you need a local supply chain, battery and battery material supply chain. But then the battery manufacturers will say the same thing to you. Without offtake agreements from vehicle manufacturers to locate and build EVs in the UK, they're not going to invest in the UK. So to an extent, there's a bit of chicken and egg there, but which is why we think government support is very important to get these offtake agreements from manufacturers and then to anchor some local capabilities in battery material supply chain, and then have the battery investors invest in the gigafactories in the UK. The second important aspect I needed to mention is that we don't know whether we'll get a deal or not, right? As you probably know, SMMT has been in the news almost every other week, lobbying hard for a deal for the automotive sector, right? At the moment, it's all up in the air. You might want to hold your breath. Who knows whether we get a deal or not? If we don't get a deal and we get really harsh treatment on the rules of origin for batteries, then we're in trouble. because how much local content can we claim in a UK manufactured battery today? Which is why I said we need to beef up not just gigafactories or not just battery manufacturing, but also a battery material supply chain. Just assembling is no good. Well, don't get me wrong, it is good for the economy, but it's not good enough. We need the material supply chain around those gigafactories.
Yeah, so really, in terms of EV, David, there are two B words, aren't there? One of them's batteries, and the other word, I'm not even going to say the word, but everybody knows what B word that is. Okay, Neil Johnson's Johansson's asked a question. Given that it's always easier to expand rather than start from scratch, how can Envision ASEC expand to 35 gigawatts, and how long might it take? That's a good point. You know, if you already know what you're doing, got your supply chains, got your people in, got your access to power, you know, energy to run the plant, run the facility. That's not a bad point, actually. What do you think to that, Dave? I mean, you're not necessarily a gigafactory expert, I know, David, but you do know some cool stuff. So what was your thoughts on that question?
Obviously, I cannot speak on behalf of Envision ASEC, but what I can say is generally speaking, it is based on a business case, right? So if I were, again, for the sake of illustration, if I were an Envision ASEC, I'd be asking, is there actually demand, particularly in that area? So as I think it's no secret, right? We know that they supply the Nissan plant in Sunderland.
Yep.
If I were to beef up my capacity to about 30 or 35 gigawatt hours per annum, is there demand? If there's not enough local demand, what do I do with the excess capacity? So if I produce right up to near capacity, what am I going to do with the excess stock, right? I may ship it back and sell it to customers in the continent. But if you have tariffs, what's the point? If you slap on the tariffs on those components or the finished product, well, I'd say perhaps I might just set up shop in Hungary, Poland, or Southern Germany.
Yes, yes. I'm so tempted to talk about the other B, but I'm not going to. But there you are. Look, there's some other questions about emissions from brakes and tires, etc. This all goes in the mix. You clearly, in your a very comprehensive run through, David, they've covered off a lot there around, how is this all going to happen? How might it happen technically, and how might it happen economically? It's a highly complex, we hope, managed transition, but the shift to EV, it certainly ain't straightforward and simple, is it? There's no doubt that's that comes out hugely in your work, in your presentation. So we thank you for that. I know you've got to go shortly, but what I would like to just say is you're clearly doing very well, David, because I noticed in that journey you put up as a picture of the autonomous vehicle where you then called in to get the pint of milk because you needed it. When you got home, you have gates to your house, so that clearly says to me you're doing very well, Dave. If you live in a house with gates on the drive, that's good.
That's an illustrative example. We still have, as you probably know, about 30 to 40% of people do not have off-street parking in the UK. That's not representative of the UK.
Yes, I know. It was a big tease. Forgive me. But David, what a great way to start this. You really did cover all bases there in that. So all aces, perhaps I should say. So thank you very much for that. I know you got to pop off, but we really appreciate you sharing everything with us as you just did, and the Q&A with the audience. So much appreciated, David. Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, thanks. So Pim, I think next we've got Mike Potts. Mike actually might even be able to add a little bit about Coca-Cola, because I know he used to work at Coca-Cola. So David mentioned that in terms of how to expand your brand, how to make sure that you make money, how to look at reinventing yourself to a certain extent. So I don't know how much about Coca-Cola Mike is going to talk about, but what he's definitely going to talk about is Streetdrone, which is something I've been aware of for some time. I've been over and met the guys over in Oxford. I think I did that, Mike, a couple of years ago now, funnily enough, but you're clearly going from strength to strength. You've got more product out there. I don't know, 20, 30 of those amazing Twizzes that you make. And if anybody who's watching this doesn't know, apart from how fantastic Mike is and the rest of his crew, this organization is put together and ostensibly sort of set up by the guy that runs the best performing Formula E team. So, you know, he's the manager of Techeetah, and, you know, I'm sure Mike's going to talk a little bit about that, but I'm not going to steal any more of his thunder. Mike is going to show us and take us on a journey of some of the practical applications and the real world actually happening now, reality of autonomous stuff. So Mike, over to you.
Thank you, Roger. What an intro. Let me. It's difficult following David, isn't it? He's a very well informed person in this industry. Maybe a little bit of an intro to me first. Then I don't come from the automotive industry at all. I was at Coca-Cola. Thank you for that. I think the only thing I remember about Coca-Cola, Roger, is that they want to put a drink within an arm's reach of desire. That was their big mantra when I was there, and so they employed loads of people to drive around in small vans, and that was what I was doing, and distribute their product to retailers.
I prefer Pepsi, Mike. I'm sorry about that. Sorry, I'll switch off my mic now.
We can have a good conversation, Roger, about it. In fact, in my interview with Coca-Cola, I told them I didn't like Coca-Cola, and I still got the job, so that was quite good. My background is digital. It's e-commerce. I was number 7 in at the door at Expedia in the UK, and I went on to be their European Business Development Manager, rolling out hotel products and Expedia sites in Italy and the Netherlands and Sweden, and then went on to form a couple of companies around travel, and then ultimately around digital and data and the technology that drives a lot of the understanding of user experience and user interfaces in the e-commerce industry. So I come from a very, very digital background, not an automotive or technical one. And Roger mentioned Mark Preston, who's my business partner and co-founder of Streetdrone. He comes from an automotive background, Formula 1, Formula E, and we got our heads together and started talking about what we could do together. We both have a shared interest in the future of mobility and have done for a long time. And autonomy encapsulates some of those very pioneering things that we've both done in our lives, and perhaps the integration of a lot of digital and a lot of automotive, obviously. And that's why we like doing what we're doing. So that's a little bit of background from me. Behind you, you see some of the cars that we sell. We sell them all around the world to institutions that are trying to learn about autonomy and apply R&D to them. And so they include people like Monash University in Australia and Surrey University and Coventry University in the UK. There's a mining organisation who has one of our cars in Germany who do electrification and automation of mining vehicles. And we have 26 vehicles out there at the moment, and they're full stack. So we have a vehicle product, which is integration of a proprietary drive-by-wire system, which is full safety, fully functional safety protocols for autonomous vehicles. We have an integration of sensors on that vehicle, networking, data, and the computer, obviously. We provide some of the self-driving functionality for those vehicles as well in the form of open source. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. And we provide the connectivity to the cloud as well. So they are fully functional. You can buy a vehicle from us and it will run in limited operational design domains in autonomous mode with a safety driver. And we've done that for remarkably little money. And I'll talk a lot about money because I think it's an interesting aspect. I'm not going to go into anywhere near as much detail as David did. I don't know the industry to his depth. But I do have an interesting view perhaps on the things that are important to me as a businessman and to my company within the automotive industry and within the autonomous industry. So that's what I'm going to talk about. It's very high level. And I'm really interested in everyone's views of what I've got to say. So see if I can make this move. This was actually a presentation that I did this morning at Transport as a Service conference, TAS, so it's high level. And I just wanted to talk about this idea of ubiquitous autonomy. Is it, are we being fed a bit of a lie by the people who claim that this is going to be a thing, or perhaps is there some truth in it? David nicely already did this, but I'll recap. Level 0 to level 5. In production, only level 2. Allowed now roads, only level 2 at the moment. Level 3 seems to be somewhat of a, I think that's probably more of the red herring. Level 4 is where most of us are aiming for. Level 5 is ubiquitous autonomy, go anywhere to anywhere, in my opinion. And it's a really important question for me, because it should give us guidance on where we need to focus as a business, and perhaps somewhat as an industry, and investors and others should be looking at, where's the money going to be, where are the things that autonomy changes in our lives, not where we would like them to be, but where's the reality. And I do think that a lot of the time the reality has been massively overstated, and that's a bit of a problem. Here's a couple of examples that a lot of you probably know about. This is Waymo, Google's self-driving company. This is very back of the envelope, but just as an example, the 600 vehicles that they have on the road at the moment, most of which are test vehicles, R&D vehicles. If you take how much they've spent on this challenge of autonomy, and you look at those 600 vehicles, each one of those is 5 million plus per vehicle. It's a very, very expensive taxi. Clearly nowhere near where it needs to be in terms of a reality for the market. Here's Lyft. Lyft allow autonomous taxi providers onto their platform. It's an active taxi based in Las Vegas. So Las Vegas is a big, is where a lot of these taxis are because of the licensing laws. And even they don't think level 5 ubiquity is really ever going to happen. And Jody Kelman runs their autonomous division, which is called level 5, ironically, and says that this will never happen. And in fact, what they're looking at is whether they can put level 4 vehicles on the road on specific routes where they know they make money. In other words, the car will understand that route, not come from a position of, hey, I've never been here before, I completely understand what I'm supposed to do. That's extremely challenging, of course. And so challenging that even Waymo kind of admit that this is as hard as putting people on the moon, I think was one of the phrases that came from them. So I think that's the reality, is we're not heading for that anytime soon. I don't expect to be alive when it happens. And there really are a load of problems with this as far as I'm concerned. The first one is safety, and David kind of talked about it. The ethical aspects towards overstating reality. And when Tesla put out their full self-driving, I say full self-driving technology beta 2 weeks ago, it's really quite scary for me. And the reason it's scary is that in the driver's seat of those vehicles are system supervisors, untrained system supervisors. And there are videos, you can go onto YouTube and have a look at the videos of people testing these cars, because really they're test crash dummies in R&D vehicles. When we put autonomous vehicles on the road, level 2 autonomous vehicles, which is what the Tesla is, we have a trained safety driver, a systems engineer at the helm who understands the complete system, not just looking at some lights and understanding that the vehicle might be doing something, but exactly what that vehicle is doing. And so I think the safety aspect of it, and we can debate long and hard about whether Tesla's doing a good job or not. I think Elon overstates constantly. We all know Elon overstates the reality constantly. I think he does our industry some damage by doing that. And unfortunately, he's going to do damage to the people driving his vehicles as well. And that's already happened, obviously. So that's one problem. The second one is misallocation of investment. It's been very apparent that lots of companies have spent a lot of money on the challenge of autonomy, and you can kind of see why. The promise of robo-taxis, the promise of shared vehicles which are autonomous and can operate at huge utilization is attractive, and it's obviously something that a lot of people want to win that race. Unfortunately, I think a lot of people are recognizing that race is, and I think Mercedes last week even announced that they were pulling out of the race for autonomy, realizing that race is not one to be won in the near term, certainly. So there's been a misallocation of investment, which has led to real inflation of some of the resources that that might be useful in the world if you think about it properly, and in particular engineering. I think one of the challenges for me when I look at the market is seeing many different companies producing the same technology over and over again, and therefore the cost of your engineering staff goes up significantly because you have to buy people off Waymo, and that's really quite expensive. For us, it's a challenge as a small company, obviously, to find experienced robotics and autonomous engineers really is a challenge as we grow, and not made any easier by the fact there's been a lot of hype. And I think the fourth thing is, and David touched on this, more than touched on this, the lack of focus on the real areas where autonomy makes an incredible difference to people. And that's been a reoccurring theme that I hear. When I mention autonomy to people, they immediately put us in the bucket of Waymo and passenger vehicles. And I think there's a lot of other areas where autonomy makes a much, much bigger difference and can do so in the shorter term. And we need to really start focusing on those and stop having the conversation about passenger vehicles so much. So what's the reality then? Where's autonomy being used at the moment from what we can see? The first one is obviously the crash test dummy here in the left-hand seat. Now, advances in autonomous technologies clearly have given advances in ADAS, and David talked about that in terms of lane keeping. I'm glad the UK is not advocating high-speed stuff like this. It's extremely dangerous. As I say, trained safety driver or not, there's a bit of a debate there to be made, but certainly there's safety benefits of these systems being on board vehicles. But I know as an owner of a vehicle that has lane keeping and adaptive cruise control that if I don't keep an eye on the system can fool you sometimes, and it often does, even where there's nice bright white lines and dry weather. So those systems are not very sophisticated yet, let's face it. The second thing, and I think this is perhaps one of the more interesting ones, remote control or teleoperation vehicles are something that increasingly people can see we could put in place now. Now, they're not using autonomy. What they are using is a bunch of systems that autonomy needs in order to be level 4. So the redundant systems that we're building into our vehicles that will enable them to have a minimum risk maneuver, that is, if something goes wrong, if all hell breaks loose and the vehicle can't cope with what it's being asked to do, it simply stops in the middle of the road, for instance. So an automated braking system that activates when all power's shut off or sensors fail or whatever the situation is. That kind of technology needs to go into vehicles like this one where the driver's not present. That's exactly the same redundancy system. So we have teleoperation companies now, they're software based. We have companies like ours which produce the brains of the vehicle to enable those vehicles to be controlled from afar. We just need to start building in the validation of those systems to enable rollout very, very quickly and rollout in ports, in extreme areas and extreme situations. In airports, in fact, airports are very interesting. There's a lot of vehicles in airports that get utilized once a day. And that means the driver has to go to that vehicle, move it, get out, go somewhere else and go into another vehicle. That wastes an awful lot of time. So taking the driver out and allowing a remote drive to control very many different vehicles is a proper commercialization of the industry right now. So it's one that we're quite excited about and quite interested in. So that's the second case. Obviously, vehicles like this one, little trucks in factories following lines or however they do it. There's lots of different systems that allow that to happen. GPS systems on tractors, very popular, and John Deere have a number of systems that are used on their tractors already and in operation, just enabling a vehicle to plan a route already and then follow a GPS waypath in order to do that. And mining's interesting. Caterpillar have got some really quite advanced autonomous systems in place at the moment, and presumably some very safe teleoperation systems as well. So that's kind of the reality, and there are already business models that are being disrupted by autonomous systems, and that's really what we're trying to do at Streetdrone is look at what the short-term implications of autonomy are, and get that onto the ground now. I think we're in danger because of the slight misallocation of investment and this talk about automated passenger vehicles, we're in danger of not putting autonomy out there for the purpose of improving people's lives, especially in cities, and using our understanding and thinking around the future of mobility in the way that we possibly could. And I stress that if we do put the kinds of money into the kinds of things that we're thinking about in cities, as against putting that kind of money into passenger vehicle automation, we're going to get somewhere very, very, very quickly that can affect people right now. So our approach is follow the money. This is not a very complicated thing to think about. The first thing is commercial realities are that if you don't get to level 4, you have no commercial approach to solve. And the reason for that is if you don't get the driver out, let's think about a taxi. If you can't get the driver out the taxi, or the safety driver rather out of the taxi, you've just got a more expensive taxi. There's no point in operating that system in a commercial environment, which, you know, go back to the examples in Las Vegas, they all have safety drivers. They are all more expensive taxis and they're all heavily subsidized. So getting to level 4 is really, really important. You have to be able to have a non-supervised system in play. Otherwise, the vehicle is necessarily more expensive than it will otherwise be. And that's not even thinking about sensors and the technology that runs those vehicles. Secondly, that whole system price, and that includes fleet management, it includes the sensors, it includes the computer, it includes all the technologies built into there, has to be as affordable as a normal vehicle as soon as possible. And that's really hard. And you can see by this example, $5 million taxi, how the hell do you compete with these guys who have got all that money? Especially as a small company like ours, it's really hard to think about how on earth we can go to market and compete. So how do we do it? Well, number one, we don't try to compete with Waymo. That would be stupid. And I get, you know, the question I get more than anything is, well, if Waymo, you know, if you can do it, Waymo can do it really easily. So, okay, so don't compete with those guys. Don't think about robotaxis. Don't think about passenger vehicles. Think about other areas. Second is take as much risk and complexity out of the problem as possible. You've got to reduce the problem down to something that's manageable with simpler technology. That makes the technology cheap. It makes the sensors cheaper. It makes the whole system cheaper. And we're putting a lot of effort into thinking about how you do that particular thing. Thirdly, it's really not about the product. I'm not interested in cars. I'm interested in what the services are, and David really pushed that. And I think he's absolutely right. The services are everything. What are the services in play today that can be disrupted by autonomy, and where autonomy can make a massive difference, not to just the services themselves, but the cost of those services and the commercial rollout of those services. And fourthly, we look hard at what the megatrends are in the world, and we tend to go with those. And those megatrends, COVID, obviously, this huge increase in e-commerce and home deliveries, and what that means for people's lives. The fact that last mile deliveries still doesn't make any commercial sense. And to that note, Amazon spends about 20 billion a year in subsidizing their last mile delivery package. So it's still not really worth doing this. There's some really good companies that have come up, some good delivery companies, especially in the UK, have come up with ways of making money out of it. But if you look at the likes of Deliveroo and Uber Eats, the cost of each of those deliveries is still absolutely staggering. 6, 7, 8 pounds per delivery. It's enormous. So really the commercial side of last mile isn't making any sense. Autonomy could change that hugely. The other thing is cars are less and less welcome in urban environments, and these 20-mile-an-hour zones are becoming more and more and more prevalent. So those are many of the things we look at, along with pollution and environmental issues, obviously being top of the agenda. So we focus on the EVs. So all of that has led us to thinking about 2 areas that we want to focus on. Logistics are one, and local deliveries are the other. You can call it last mile. I'd like to call it neighborhood. I think the idea around neighborhood e-commerce and reconnecting communities and enabling that to happen with autonomous services is something extremely valuable and that could be rolled out across the world. and have a very big place in disrupting that delivery market. So, as I say, I think we're trying to focus on the now, not the 10 or 15 or 20-year roadmap. So our approach to these logistics and local delivery issues are like this: no more than 20 miles an hour ever. So none of our technology that we're building is designed to go faster than 20 miles an hour. The drive-by-wire system can go faster than 20 miles an hour, that's no problem, but our software that runs that system from an autonomous perspective will never do more than 20 miles an hour. I think that's really important. It helps focus all the things that we're working on down on the use cases that only work for 20 miles an hour or less. It means we don't put vehicles on motorways, we don't cross busy roads. We are focused on those urban areas which are predominantly going to be 20 miles an hour. We're open source at the core, so all the technology we built in self-driving software in the last 2 years, we released as open source in June this year through something called Project Aslan. Project Aslan now has 30, a growing number, 30 at the moment, developers that are helping us develop that technology. And it provides an on-the-road level 2 technology right now, and it's improving constantly. We think open source has a huge part to play in the future of autonomy, and can't be overlooked. Obviously, people will start building on top of that open source and with proprietary software. We expect that, we want that, and we're going to do the same. But this gives a group of people who aren't trying to fight about who wins a battle, get down and solve some of the bigger challenges, and that's really quite critical. Thirdly, and again, David talked about this heavily, it's about partnerships and integration, not about reinvention. There's some fantastic technologies out there. We aim to integrate many of them into the systems that we produce. So I think the final one here about data is, I don't think about this world as a connected world. I think about it as a data world. And I think we need to understand some of that stuff. The integration piece is going to be all about integrating software together. And it's much more about ensuring the data between different systems can be shared, or at least travel around, than it is the connected bit itself. The connections are simply wires or non-wires, aren't they? And David also talked about 5G quite a lot. I think 5G is really important. We're doing a project with Nissan in Sunderland and a bunch of other companies to autonomize a logistics truck at the Sunderland plant, and it takes goods from a Vantec supply warehouse to the Nissan factory. The key component of all of that is the ability to control that vehicle remotely and rescue it if it's in a tough area, or ensure that it's working, and when it stops, to keep it going. And that relies on really, really low latency, high bandwidth telecommunications for the teleoperation system. And 5G, actually, for me, the first real application of 5G is ensuring you've got that low latency situation always available, so that when your vehicle has to grind to a halt because something's gone wrong, you've got the ability to pick that up and run with it. That's me. I hope I didn't take too long over it, but thank you very much. Oh yes, the last one is this. This is our thinking around a neighborhood delivery vehicle, and this is some of what we're going to be doing from a development perspective in the next few years. Thanks.
Mike, bravo. Straight talking, no nonsense, straight to the point, everything that it needs to be. So no, I think that's most welcome, and really good. By the way, I've been, like everyone here, I guess, been doing this Zoom thing more than ever this year. And I've noticed for a while people wearing rather fetching earrings, which I've only just started wearing myself. They're rather nice. The amazing thing is they also work as earplugs, so you can actually hear through them as well. They're not just a fashion accessory, which I think is marvelous. If only I'd known all those months ago. Mike, here's a question. If level 5 is never going to happen, what about level 4, and when? And our friend Pim has poked that one at you, my friend.
Thank you, Pim. Level 4 is possible now in the right situations. Absolutely. and really the major difference between level 4 and level 5 is a vehicle's understanding of its own environment. And in fact, you know, all these vehicles that we've been talking about, regardless of whether they're level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, they're all autonomous. They're just autonomous within different operational design domains. We you know, SAE chose to define a very limited, actually. I mean, if you look at our operational design domain documents, they run to about 20 or 30 pages. So that you have to be very sophisticated when you start specifying the environments these things can run in. But level 4 absolutely is possible now, and you know there are level 4 parts of the system out there now. In fact, Neuro's a company in the US which was the first to get a license to run level 4 vehicles in California on the roads, and they have a fully redundant system. And I would imagine, I haven't had a chance to look at it and get my engineering team to look at it, but I would imagine from the vehicle all the way to the software, they're absolutely level 4 compliant. And that means they have to have redundancy on brakes and steering and power and sensors, but not just the sensors on top of the vehicle, which enable the autonomy, but the sensors at a vehicle system level as well. So it's not uncomplicated, it's hard. It's something that even a company of our level are going to have. I mean, we've got some really, really smart people that come from motorsports and are into control systems for vehicles, but we'll have a level 4 system within 18 months. And so
right,
level 4 is possible now.
Okay, so on that theme, Philip, aka the four horsemen of the Autocalypse guest, says, can you tell us about motorsport ways of doing things? So you alluded to it there briefly. I guess rapid prototyping, the ability to deal with things, yeah, typically quickly, rapidly, etc. Anything else that is coming out of that kind of that motorsport DNA that we're seeing in Streetdrone?
A little bit. So the first thing was we took Ian Murphy. Some of you may know Ian. He's worked in motorsports for a long time. Formula 1 at Williams. Before that was at Ford. He's a vehicle control systems mechatronics expert. And so our drive-by-wire system came from his understanding of a motorsports level drive-by-wire system, and we've gone and built on that. And that's really that was motorsports through and through. We use motorsports ECUs. We use a lot of motorsports understanding in terms of how those control systems work. And then we've applied it to the problem of autonomy. Other things, yeah, I mean, telematics and telemetry, a lot of our understanding of that comes from motorsports. So, you know, we have an understanding of the systems that work within the motorsports arena when it comes to telemetry and telematics. And we know, you know, we know Cosworth and we know McLaren, and we know a lot of people in that area. So yes, it runs through the company. But the rapid prototyping of stuff and getting things like these base vehicles out of the factory, you know, without having to learn how to do that was a big deal for sure.
Sure. I understand. By the way, I've just had a call from Elon Musk. He said some of what you said was true, but as far as he's concerned, he wants me to show this picture, Mike. He said this is where they are with things. He said they have got all their ducks in a row. So what you're talking about. But actually, on a serious note, I do think your logical progression of this technology, I do think your application-specific delivery of it at low speed, you know, with safety being the absolutely predominant feature in it, is the right way forward. I think that if we're not careful, the principle of autonomy could get damaged. You know, dare I call it a brand, but, you know, let's just call it something. Can get damaged if we have too many serious issues, fatalities at worst, and other things happening too. So, you know, I don't want to pitch you against Tesla, but personally, you know, two different companies, forget the scale and scope and size of everything. I prefer your approach, to be honest with you. I had a Tesla for 6 weeks, a Model X. I had it on a long-term lease before, when I was trying to decide what to get next. And I'll be really honest with you, despite I'm an advocate for a lot of this journey, I used it once and I didn't feel comfortable using it even that one time. I thought there are too many people and other situations on the road that I didn't want to have an issue with, have an accident. The fact I'd had an accident driving a car some weeks before kind of probably added to that. But yeah, safety first, absolutely. Well, look, Mike, thank you so much for sharing that all with us. I think anyone who wants to know more, of course, can get in touch with you, can have a look at Streetdrone's website, etc. Fascinating stuff. So for now, thank you very much. Please hang around because we're going to do some questions at the end. Yeah, so I'd now like to, we're now an international platform, by the way, folks, because we're going to zap across to the Netherlands to Ashit Shah, who is CEO of Autofacets. It's a global automotive center of excellence organization. So Ashit, I can see you're there waiting in the wings. You've got a good, 20 minutes or more if you want. Take your time. Because we were one speaker down, we've had the freedom of a bit more time for each of you. So please share us what you want, and then we're going to go for a bunch of questions at the end. So anyone in the meantime that's got their questions, please shove them in the chat box. And as long as we haven't got more than 308, we will ask those questions at the end. So take it away, please.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Roger. Again, thank you everyone for joining. Great time with David first and Mike. So lot we heard about, mobility, autonomous, and so on and so forth. So let me introduce, us as Autofacets and myself. So as rightly said by Roger, we are based out in Netherlands. The headquarters is based out in Netherlands, and we focus solely on automotive, and we are a solution and a digital company. So we produce this solution and products, of course, in and around mobility side of the business. So again, today's topic, to keep it very clean and clear, of course, who we are, what we do is something that I will touch base. And of course, how we started the journey into the mobility with various customers from the leasing, rental, and dealer and OEMs, and where do we stand at this point of time. That is something that I would be focusing and showcasing it, along with, of course, what is the technology role, because finally, as we rightly all said, we are a technology company at the end of the day, and to provide the right solution at the right time to the right business model is what we bring in. So that's one thing. I will just zoom this out. So yeah, Autofacets, we are 23 years almost, old company organization based out in Netherlands. Of course, we have our offices in UK, but also in most of the European countries, and a couple of them also in US and Canada. Completely independent. Started the automotive side of business since 2000. Which were the first customer being Eurocar Parts, which is now a part of LKQ, of course. And since then have been transforming a lot of automotive solution, whether it be it a garage or whether it independent garage, I mean to say, or a leasing companies or rental companies, or even the big dealer group and OEMs. So that's where the center of excellence comes from, spending 20 plus years in digital transformation for different type of medium to large enterprises. Predominantly has been a Microsoft driven, technology that we have been utilizing and competing on. But since last, of course, 4 years, it's all about, open utilizing all the open source environment that we have it at this moment and moving forwards to it. As I said, 16 countries, predominantly into Europe, our focus is. And of course, we have 6 development centers across the globe. Go to the next one. One of the element of Gateway Group, and that's where the mobility comes into the picture, and the smart mobility is, we are not only focused on automotive, of course, almost 50% above revenue is being generated through automotive as a group, but we also are very much into the data side, because anything and everything that happens, finally, it's the data. So we have also a data accuracy platform, which is called AutoDAP, where we ensure that, it's not just the solution which makes the difference, but it's the data through which the intelligent solutions has been built, and also data as a service has been provided. On top of that, a lot of other brands we are there. And the most important thing is travel and logistics, where we have a flagship brand of Deluxe, which also works hands on hands with the mobility side of the business. I will tell you how and what in a few slides coming forward. So yeah, these are some of the numbers. And now starting with, of course, the topic, which is smart mobility and automotive. We know this, diagram, the pictorial thing since long, 1908, when the speed limit used to be 70, and today where we spend, of course, in different countries, the speed limits are different, miles, kilometer, or somewhere 100, 120. And of course, if we are all living perhaps in Germany, in Autobahn, it could be, endless. But the picture says a lot that the speed at which the innovation in automotive happened, and especially into the cars, or rather the fleet includes also the trucks, it took a lot of time for a lot of innovations to happen. Of course, safety, security, and everything was been considered and done it. But if we look at 2020, where we stand, and that's where, what it all matters, all this, what the automotive industry has been doing since last 100 odd years is been getting nowadays done in 2 to 3 years. Of course, a lot of things are debatable, a lot of things are evolving, emerging, but still the terms at which the technology is, shaping up the fleet size and the fleet way, how it is becoming more and more smarter, it's going at the rapid pace. We still know, when the GPS came into the picture, the Bluetooth, nobody thought about, iOS and Android, how they will be managing, what it will be happening when the upgrades comes, and so on and so forth over there. But yes, we saw all those, waves coming in. And right now, everything happens so swiftly and so quickly that it sometimes makes it very difficult to keep up the pace and also ensure that, all the innovations are, taken to the next, stage. For us, the smart mobility, as I said, we are a purely software, organization, out of assets, and we focus ensuring that we bring the whole smart mobility into the hands of the end customer. So whether it has different parameters starting from, integrated fare management to the travel card. We all know there are different companies who provide the travel cards, multimodal transportation solutions, could be bus, train, travel, air, or anything, or taxis. Smart parking included, autonomous, vehicles, of course, getting there, data management. Our job and what makes smart mobility really smart is when all these elements, business models, and the services comes together, and that's where we make we make the difference. If finally, when we talk about smart mobility, is very simple, term. What is the need and how to be satisfied? So how can a person can reach from A to B, and what it all needs in order to reach from position A to position B or position Z in that case, is what we provide. So different models connecting different areas and ensuring that in a single open environment, we are able to connect all these players together and provide a seamless mobility. And again, the trick is always in the data and the intelligence and the platform and integration. And that is what we bring in, which makes smart mobility feasible. Of course, different country has its different pace at which it is going, but we are very much ahead of the pace, especially that given the fact our mobility services are also lying in Norway, Sweden, and Netherlands at this moment. Objectives is very simple for smart mobility, as we all know: safe, sustainable, efficient, reliable, and seamless. These are the 5 pillars on which any of the solutions in smart mobility relies on. So when Mike was also talking about autonomous vehicles, it's all finally coming to these 5 pillars. What objectives does this mobility trends would be focusing and serving? And these are, as we know, are the 5 pillars to ensure that it works all well and safe. And finally, yes, safe. When we say sustainable, we said there are 3 pillars that comes into the picture, which makes smart mobility really smart and intramodal. Number 1 is, of course, compatible infrastructure, whether it is the charging point or ensuring at any point of time the services are made available, which has been governed in collaborations with different partners, and having a middle, which is the most strongest pillar, integrated mobility systems. That's where we come into the picture along with many players. And finally, of course, dynamic policies and regulations. Still, autonomous driving from level 1 to level 5, everything is getting defined. Every country is putting up their own structure when it comes to the policies and regulations. But of course, to make whole thing work, this is where the 3 pillars needs to come together and ensure that the whole sustainable mobility apart is also been taken to the next level. So yes, these are the three models which we work very tightly, and of course integrated mobility system is where we focus ourselves on, and I will be talking more on that pillar today. When we talk about smart mobility, we know the 5 pillars again: seamless, safe, sustainable, and efficient. What does it bring to finally to the end customer? The leasing customer, the rental players, they all have been doing their bits and services since many, many years, and change and transform the model is the most difficult piece that is going through. So everybody is looking, as we rightly heard in the earlier presentations, whether it is the OEMs connecting with different connected ecosystem, coming with autonomous driving, having the autonomy, so choosing the mode of transportations, electrification. We all know how far it has been going, and micro mobility also. We should not forget that this is the piece which will be driving a lot. It is already happening in certain mature market. If we look at micro mobility essentially means any fleet that can go less than 25 km/h, which will have a lot of impact, especially into the cities and congested cities. So whether it is the e-scooters or the bikes, especially in Netherlands, we have more bikes in Netherlands than even any other fleet. So that's also something that is playing a very, very prominent role in defining the smart mobility, along with, of course, MaaS. We heard about MaaS earlier today from David, that MaaS is happening. It's happening, but it is only profitable when there is a mass market to it. So yes, but we need to get ready to it. And finally, of course, intra-mobility and integrations, without which the smart mobility, as we call solution and service, cannot work. The most important aspect of all, we can have all of this individually playing its own role, but if their intermodality integrations are not put into the place, it's almost impossible to bring all this pillar coming together and work seamlessly out there. So yes, these are again the solutions and the services that we are looking to ensure the smart mobility goes to where it belongs and it has been thought by. Imperatives, we know why smart mobility is becoming more and more imperative. When we talk about seamless, convenience, everybody wants the convenience. We have all known how the things are happening. If somebody wants to rent it for few minutes, few hours, or few even days, this convenience is what everybody is looking at. Hand on hand with affordability, which makes it happen, because if convenience is there and affordability is not there, then of course things doesn't work. And ensuring availability. So these are the 3 critical elements, and through the systems which are getting developed, all this is coming together, ensuring any fleet at any given point of time, with the price and the budget, of course, depending on different variables, is made available with the multi-systems integrations coming into the picture. Safety, of course, everything possible only when the safety and sustainability is put into the place. And we already heard about ADAS, how it has been evolving in itself in last 3 to 5 years. And of course, a lot of things that has to do with whether it is the city alerts or the road conditions, and the traffic lights. Again, again a simple example, but of course, also getting more and more intelligent. So smart mobility needs to get connected to all these, separate elements to ensure that it becomes not only safe but also workable and completely integrable. Finally, we are all into the sustainable mode of reducing congestions, which of course, reduces the CO2, but also sustainably, getting into the reduced travel time, and also optimizing the use of resources as far as possible with the eco-friendly manner, which is again, becoming by far the largest piece of, problem, and of course the solutions which has been thought through especially by the governments and also the OEMs, especially into the EU, with all the norms put into the place. And of course efficient and reliable, which is again all coming together when the seamlessness and the sustainable and safeness comes part into it. change in the business model. The reason why, the whole structure has been changing. We know all the players above, starting from the OEM to importers to retailers, and finally the customer. They are all, going from left to right directions and utilizing all different fleets and different models, be it a financing model, be it leasing, rental, sharing, and so on and so forth. But finally, what the future looks like, and that's where the focus is from each of this, above traditional players, is have a grid master, ensuring everything comes together, and with the digitalizations and the technology solutions, direct customer relationship is been born. So likes of Daimlers, we know, likes of BMW, everybody is pushing and getting near and near to the to the end customers. Of course, not to say that importers and retailers will be vanishing it too soon, definitely not. But we clearly see the model is been changing by far, very quickly, and the goal is to ensure that customer finally is able to get with this transitions of business model that are coming on. Of course, players, integrated ecosystems, different players, likes of the Ubers, likes of bike sharings, biking, micromobility. Renault Smart already have all those micromobility fleets services into the place, corporate sharing. So all this integrations ecosystems, if that is not put into the place, then still the smart mobility concept, as we envision it, and we see it in the market, in different market, while we are experimenting since last 5 years, we see that if these things are not integrated, still the smart mobility will stay on paper, or rather on a very, very subdued level, rather than booming it and making profit out of it. So the most critical thing is to have ensuring that all these players which are currently innovating, which are developing, which are getting mature day in, day out, are able to be integrated finally to the final mobility services that each of the different providers would be providing it. And of course, when Auto Facets comes into the picture, as we see the 5 pillars and the 3 critical pillars, what Auto Facet does since last 4.5 years with different customers is bringing all this players together. So as Auto Facet, what we have created is the core service framework, benefiting all these different types of services. Could be full operational lease, financial lease, flex lease, bikes, e-bikes, green lease, different leasing, rental players coming into the picture. We have started with the lease and rental piece because we believe that they are the ones who will be transforming, because we all know the lease cycle and the lifespan of leasing vehicles is getting reduced. It used to be 7, 5 years, 3 years, and now even in some countries within a year the lease can be changed. Again, I'm talking about long lease. Of course, there is short rental, short lease, and of course day rentals things. But the things are changing by far very quickly, from different leasing, rental, and OEM providers. And what we bring for them is getting all these business models, different business models coming into one core framework, and let a customer, define, what they want it, how they want it. And finally, how they do it is basically through data, which is the bottom layer, which is the most crucial pillar of it, by having, of course, different machine learning algorithm, ensuring the needs is being known, and also the affordability is being known, and availability. So whether it is driving pattern, vehicle health, mobility preferences, trip logs, we get all this together from different systems, integrated systems, and ensure that the stakeholders are being given the right tool, whether it is from the licensing, and the subscription model, loyalty program model, or the network services. The integrations are made possible with different players, would be an OEMs and fleet services, taxi companies, of course, be part of it. Public transport, as we know, it has also will be playing a very key element in the mobility side of the services, and of course remarketing and fuel companies also already playing a role. But this all will be coming together as an integration engine towards serving the core framework. And finally, for whom? It's very simple. It's for the customer, whether it is B2B, B2C, C2C, or B2B2C customers. we will be seeing, they will be using the apps more or less in getting and finding the right thing at the right time at the right place with different services, looking out for them. So whether smart calculators, we bring the smart calculators to the picture, multimodal comparison, which is also very important, just like insurance or, any other services. Finally, the mobility would also be having the multimodal comparison where, the customer would be looking that, okay, which is not only the cheapest, but also affordable, not only affordable, but also sustainable, and which is the best way to communicate from A to Z. And that's how things will get collaborated. And finally, the decisions will be, influenced. And of course, customer profiling is getting more and more important because with that, exactly whom to offer, what to offer, when to offer, and how to offer. And finally, of course, with the notification all coming together. And without this, with this all, it's also very critical that engaging the customer, with different community. We are all living in the sharing community already. And the role that we have been playing is bringing all these things together to ensure that the positioning of the smart mobility services are being done very much intelligently by making it sweeter for the end customer and having a win-win scenario for all of them. So yes, this is what Autofacet as an integrated mobility framework has been focusing. We have been doing a lot of pilots in the last 4 years in Norway, in Benelux, in Sweden, in Germany. And as rightly pointed, earlier by David and Mike, this will take its own time, depending on the market, depending on, how the things are moving. Of course, COVID not helping us a lot in this year, but on the other side, yes, everybody is looking for independent fleet to travel instead of, utilizing at least the public transport and looking for a shorter version of, lease and fleet, but via, the smart mobility. So yes, things are coming together, and we as an Autofacet, are putting this framework towards, the different stakeholders, be it OEMs, be it leasing organizations, lease plans, CLD, Automotive, for example, or likes of rental, Avis Budget. We bring and provide them the solutions and engaging, different players and doing the right integrations for the right countries and ensuring that end customer is able to get the right A to Z trip advice and also selections of the mobility. So that's very quick, Roger, from me.
No, great. Ashid, thank you so much. I mean, there's a lot in here. One of the questions I definitely have is how different do you think this adoption is going to be all around the world? Because one of the metrics I'm always keen to use is what they call motorization per 1,000 of the population. So, and I know a few of these just about from memory. In America, it's about 840 out of 1,000 people have a car. In China, it's sort of racing up, but it's around 200, I think now. In India, it's like 22. So if you take those three sort of places, massive variance in ownership of vehicles as we stand today with internal combustion. So do you think there's going to be a radically different adoption of various bits of connected, autonomous, shared and electric around the world? It's not a kind of zero-sum game with everything changing at the same time everywhere, is it?
No, absolutely true, Roger. How the things, what we see it, and we being in the 16 most European countries, to be honest, we see even in Europe. If I take an example of Norway, I will come to your question about US and Asia, India specifically, what you asked. But before that, when we see the adaptations of this smart mobility, solutions and services, when we started in Netherlands, there were hardly any organizations who were ready to do this, so-called trial with this core framework, because everybody were pretty, much happy with what has been happening in and around their space, whether it is leasing, rentals, importers, retailers. But we saw that, in companies where the infrastructure is well built, whether it is a telecom infrastructure or electric, charging infrastructures, also cybersecurity, because that is also one of the, key element which we do not have to discount, because one of the greatest thing, to make everything work together, is the security measurement, And looking at all this, seeing the maturity of, different countries and adaptations of all of this, we see that certain countries are moving very fast. If you look at Norway, for example, where we are predominantly been very successful in experimenting and now into the mainline business, almost 14% of the fleet is into the mobility, which is a great number in last 3 years. And if you look at Netherlands, it's still at 3 to 4%, but still it's improving every day in, day out. And a few countries like France and Germany, where we did this thing and we are doing, it's less than 1%. So again, depending on infrastructure, depending on the different of course players playing their part, and of course government putting their bits and efforts are taking. So it won't be a radical change, for sure not. It would be a very slow change what we are seeing at this moment, be it US, be it even in Asia and India. Still it has only just started in past 2 years, but still, yes, for the small fleet at least it has started. So yeah.
Okay, right. Well, thank you, Pim. I can see you're there, and I'm wondering whether you have a question. You've sat there, of course, to lots of what the ACES kind of group has gone through, and the people that we've had over, what is it now, 3 years, Pim, something like that, 3-4 years?
Yeah, we're currently in our 4th year actually. So
wow,
it's progressed quite a bit. I mean, my kind of key question, and it's kind of sort of very related to what's happening now in terms of COVID and all that sort of stuff, because I've seen headlines and articles that public transport and all that sort of stuff has dropped quite a bit, but I should imagine that to a certain degree, but maybe I'm wrong, and hence me asking the question, is with the pandemic happening, are we all getting a bit more afraid of each other, and therefore do we see public transport dropping, or do we see that changing? Is ride sharing really going to happen? Is that like a realistic option, or are people going to shy away from that because of what's happened? Ashid, what are your views on that? How much of an impact could this potentially make? Or if the vaccine is working, in 6 months to a year time, do we all happily carry on to what we were before?
Yeah, and Mike, please join us. I can see you're there lurking behind your screen, so please jump in as well. Whether, Mike or Ashid, what about that point? Is this a schism that we're going through, this weird year, and we'll kind of go back to whatever, or how is this going to impact behavior? What do you think to Pim's question, Ashid or Mike?
I suppose our view, Streetdrone is a bit driven by the technology ask, actually. It's a lot easier to design vehicles that don't have people in them. Because one of the things we have to consider is, what do you do when the shit hits the fan? What do you do when your sensors stop working and the autonomy stops working? Well, the simplest thing to do at slow speed is slam on the anchors. When you've got people in a vehicle, that is a lot harder than when you don't have people in a vehicle. So COVID for sure has had an effect on our thinking, in that, when we're thinking about what our kind of autonomy can be applied to. COVID took shuttles out of the equation, and will do for probably a year and a half or something like that. And we're really thinking about short-term solutions. But our problem's slightly more different than that.
Yeah, I think behavioural change, for sure. But I think Ashid and Mike have both said, and I think this is the key thing to it myself, David alluded to it earlier, it's about the economics. Fundamentally, what drives change is economics. Things go to something else typically because it's better and cheaper, not because it's worse, or costly. So Ashid, do you see this sort of period of time as just something that is just that we endure, and it creates some sort of, we obviously have to adapt, but we'll just go back to normal afterwards? What do you think to Pim's question?
Absolutely. What rightly said by Mike, and also what Pim was saying, that we are being honestly in the business in which we are, and especially into the smart mobility, we clearly see we have been thrown back by at least 6 to 9 months, to be very honest with you, because the investment that has been, going, again, this is all an emerging, services, and but everybody is cautious, wants to, see how the things, settles down, and it will take at least 6 to 9 months when we will be back to where we were in January or February. So definitely, from the investment side, from the technology transformation, from integrated, services, when we talk to the governments at this point of time for having this integrated solutions, which we have started with them since last few years, they put a pause because nobody wants to currently come together and have, all sort of trials and all sort of things which were happening, in January or till January and February. So yes, definitely we see certain concrete delays in this juncture.
Okay.
I mean, sorry, Roger, if I may, could it in a way make the problem a bit worse? Because I love, and I know that Gateway's done a previous presentation where you can effectively have an app to plan out your entire journey to go from your home to exactly where you need to be, right, utilizing transport and hired platforms and all that sort of stuff. But if there is a negativity around sort of ride sharing or certain of the options, I mean, I could see holes appearing in that matrix, which you can probably plug by making available an individual car. But then are we not just going to end up with even more cars than we already have? Thus, kind of not really, potentially making the problem worse, or definitely not resolving it.
True, Pim. Yeah. So it is both. When we see this as a one side as a sort of slow down, but and also not safe. But on the other side, it's also an opportunity because we still know, everybody's still focusing on, pharmaceutical companies, to come out, as rightly we said at the start, come out with, vaccine. But on the other side, a lot of technology companies and especially the, hardware providers are looking at how to make, the car more and more biologically ready, because, Tesla already has that, point. And also, few of the OEMs are, but there are a lot of such things are also getting innovated at the same point of time. So this has also given a lot of opportunities on the other side to look, far beyond the pandemics. And if this happen in the future again, with hope not, but then they are, there, to see it and take it as an opportunity and move towards that. So yes, there is, two sides of the coins always.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question? Sort of, I guess to anyone who wants to answer. We've just seen what looks like a breakthrough in terms of developing a vaccine for this bloody mess we've got ourselves into as humanity, this thing of a virus. And it could be seen, I think it is the case, that it's happened quicker than it normally would because people have collaborated, people have come together, organizations have worked like they've never worked before together. So given that illustrates anything's possible, you could argue, why aren't we collaborating more on things like electric vehicles in general, batteries, or let's be focused on this process, or autonomous vehicles and stuff, Mike? You have, if I remember correctly, an open source proposition. I think it's called, is it Aslan, Project Aslan?
That's right.
Yeah, so you are happily sharing. You're still a commercial entity. You want to have a thriving business and make profit and pay your bills and look after your stuff. You want to do those things that are normal, but at the same time you are sharing your knowledge and experience. So how does that, what can we learn from this collaborative approach with the whole COVID thing? Can we do that with autonomous stuff? Oh, look, this is where my life of luxury appears. This is where, let's have a look. Mrs. Atkins arriving with the cup of tea and the biscuits. Thank you very much, Mrs. Atkins. I'll see you later.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
I've lost my train of thought now. Yeah, the main reason that we have an open source project, and it's a not-for-profit organization that we've set up that owns the assets and the assets are code, just code. There's no hardware in there, it's just software. The reason we did that was because we realized that lots of companies, and the reason they're being, and I think, why is there so much money going into non-collaboration while shareholder value or perceived shareholder value for those companies, for sure. Those companies are publicly traded, and they needed to show that they were doing something. They now need to show that they're taking the opposite view in some cases. Mercedes, I know how well you know Mercedes, Roger. It's interesting for them to announce that they're, to publicly announce that we're not going to do this anymore.
Well, they have slightly could have rode back a bit on that, actually. I did see something on LinkedIn to say that's not quite the case. That's that wasn't the case, that they were still in the game.
Okay, so that's interesting. So there's still some perceived shareholder value in that, and I think this idea that somebody's going to win and someone's going to lose the autonomous game is completely wrong. But still, there's a base level of technology there that should be shared. It doesn't, and I truly believe that any capability that any of the OEMs has in autonomy can be matched by open source in the next 5 years. And at that point, you've wasted an awful lot of resource, haven't you? An awful lot of resource.
Yeah.
I mean, the vaccine problem's an interesting one. I'm not sure how collaborative they're being, to be honest. There's some collaboration between universities for sure, and some pharmaceutical companies, but whether there's collaboration between lots of pharmaceutical companies, I'm not so confident about. That's so many companies producing different vaccines. But
maybe I'm just being an idealist, Mike.
And I am completely an idealist when it comes to this software. For me, where I'm trying to produce the lowest possible technical solution for a given safety scenario, collaboration on open source makes complete sense. It also makes sense to my customer base, because a lot of my customer base are in education. They love open source and they love collaboration. And part of the proposition for Project Aslan was to bring together a lot of Streetdrone customers and have them work on the same problem together, and have us direct them in terms of the kinds of technology that we wanted to build. So that's it's not only a giving thing.
Okay, look, should we have a few final words then? So, Ashid, would you like to give us a final sense of what happens next, in this arena?
So yeah, as going with the smart mobility, at least on that piece, I can definitely say, because we clearly are very close to a lot of OEMs and dealer and the leasing organizations. We clearly see the shift, the model that I showed, what was present and what is the future model, where the technology and the apps, of finding A to B would be where the people would be looking at. Perhaps it would take, in some cases, 8 years to 10 years. You never know how the things are going to, transpire in the coming years. But we definitely see that it will be the trip which will be, which will be the forefront, where you want to go from A to B, rather than just having an asset, whether it is on a different business model, in and around. So that's how we see it. The future shaping us, of course, to become 100% viable, feasible. It's something that we have to look forward, but that is how, in a simplest way, if I have to put it, it's what looks like in the coming years. Yeah, and that's where we've been working.
Thank you. Just before we come to you, Mike, we're going to have a feedback poll at the end of this, by the way. Neil Johansson, thank you for being with us, and you've got to buzz off. That's fine. Mike, so what's your wrap up? What would you say to what happens next?
I think the big advance when it comes to autonomy is going to be in services to people in urban and suburban areas. And I don't think we're so far away from the capability of having your pint of milk ordered online and having it delivered autonomously from your local shop, rather than you ordering a load of shopping online and having it delivered a week later because Ocado don't have any slots left. And the advent of the autonomous locker on wheels that's level 4 and travels around and does its thing, and you put stuff in it and take stuff out of it, isn't so far away. And that's my dream, and I think that changes a lot when it comes to the mobility of the future and how we apply our technologies to that.
Okay, right. Before I hand over to Pim to finish, I'd just like to thank dtronics.monic, Mike, Tristan, Julia, Teresa, Robert, Nick, Shoei, Mark, Dave, Simon, Stephen, and Philip, as well as, of course, Ashit and Mike and David before him. So, Pim, it's time for you to wave goodbye and unplug the Zoom machine.
Yes.
Over to you.
Thank you very much. As people will be used to by now from us, I'd love to run a brief sort of feedback poll just to get your feeling on this event and how it all went, but also to give us a sense of what you would like to see at these sort of events in the future. Because obviously the ACES group organizes about 3 events a year. You know, we're always interested to get your ideas and feedback on what you would like to hear next about. So please do indicate that in the poll as well. So as soon as you completed that, then obviously you're free to go. While everybody's doing that, I'll say goodbye to the audience watching online on YouTube. So thank you for watching, and do check out any of our other videos on our online channel, or obviously on the website for live events if you want to join. So thanks for watching, and goodbye.